The Doug local user group called Doug Meetups are growing. Find your local meetup today by visiting the Doug Hub on the left menu bar. Please welcome our heroic sponsor and their session packed with superpowers. Put your questions in the conference chat to start engaging with our sponsor and fellow community members.
All right, Sean, here we go. We're gonna kick things off for today's webinar. Thanks everybody for joining us. My name is Millier. I'm the head of marketing here at KwikTag. I'm joined by my colleague, Sean Fitzgerald. Sean, if you want to introduce yourself really quick and say hello to everyone. Can't hear you.
Mute, unmute. So yeah, hey everybody. Sean Fitzgerald, as Mary said, a senior account executive here with KwikTag. I'm going to be taking you through a rapid fire demo shortly. So thank you for your time today. We're excited to be with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. And so we're going to turn off our cameras just so that we can maximize screen real estate and all of that. But please, while you're joining us for the session, at any point during the webinar today, please enter questions into the questions box in your GoToWebinar panel. We will make time for as many of those as we can at the end. All right, so now we're going to focus our attention on the slides that are in front of us and dive into today's content. Now, the subject of this, as you can see, is, best practices, tips, and how to get audit ready. And one of the things that we hear from customers all the time and organizations that we work with is that, I've heard that there's benefits. Maybe you've done research, maybe you know that AP automation is going to gain efficiencies for your organization. It's going to save money. It's going to do, the things that enable you to maximize your data entry experience and all of those things. But what else are the considerations if you're looking at all of these things, assuming that everything out there is equal? If you had to put together a checklist of how do I identify what makes this product unique versus that product unique, and what does it mean for me and my team? Well, these are some things that we hear from customers all the time that really can help you be more educated, be more prepared to make those kind of decisions, and how you can separate, what one product does and what another product does. The first thing that we hear is user experience, especially for Dynamics GP users. And I used to be one, friend, so I know the daily pain of dealing with paper invoices and how you have to do all the data entry and sorting and routing for approval and the red stamp and filling in the GL codes manually. All of that is time consuming and costs a lot of time and money, and certainly we lose efficiencies in that process. But let's talk about that from a bigger user experience. If you could automate that today, what would that look like? What does your AP team today, what does invoice approvers see today, and what would they want to see? Right now, is it many clicks? Is it that they're reaching things out of pulling things out of a file cabinet, searching, hoping things aren't misfiled? And what do they expect to see in a modern invoice workflow? The reason this user experience is so important is chances are you have a small team. When I was a GP user, there was a team of 2 of us. We didn't have a lot of bandwidth to do extra stuff and search for papers. What we often found was we received the invoice in the mail. Now, hopefully we're seeing more and more invoices arrive via email now, but we received invoices in the mail. We took them out of the envelope, we stamped them, we coded them, we walked them over to the approver. If that's your experience today, and Sean, we both know we hear this a lot. If that's your experience today, chances are you're looking for, how do I get these invoices into my system? How do I get them automated, routed for approval in a much more modern invoice workflow? We want this experience to be seamless, and we don't want to have to deal with file cabinets at all. We want there to be sort of single click, single view, review and approve, and see things show up in our ERP system, which leads us to the next point of integration. Now, there are a lot of different misconceptions and representations of what integration means for different organizations. So you have to think through, what do I have to do to get invoices into GP? Now, in the manual world, and certainly when I was an AP manager with GP, it was keying in, 10 key data entry and setting that invoice aside, waiting for it to get approved, make any adjustments to the GL coding, file the invoice in the filing cabinet. But then I had to go back and look for any supporting documentation for that invoice in the file cabinets, et cetera, et cetera. Again, our goal is to make things as digital and automated and modern as possible in today's environment. That's what we expect. That's what we've come to expect. And integration is so key. Again, we have small teams. We don't have time to do exports and reformat the file and have to do an upload. We need this experience to be truly integrated, just like this system is native to GP. And I think you'll see that in today's demonstration when Sean shares the product with you in just a little bit. And the last thing to consider is affordable. Now, there are a lot of different ways these types of products are priced. Some of them are by user. Some of them are this amount for this module, that module is extra. Some of it is, do you need the good, better, best feature set? And some of them are by volume, invoice volume, or otherwise. You really need to look at what you're paying and what you're getting for that service, for that system, for that fee. You also need to consider, are you locked in for more than you need? Are you getting charged for the good, better, best option? And maybe you only need good. So look at what you need and make sure that you're not getting charged for something that isn't part of the solution, especially if it's a by module or by feature set kind of solution. You really want to understand that you're not getting charged for extras. You want to make sure that you have everything that the product can offer for an affordable price that scales as your business needs it to. Now, we're going to give you an example of a customer that was faced with exactly these considerations and had to make a decision in a short amount of time because this customer was looking at AP automation, again, knew all the benefits, knew that there were reasons that they needed to automate their invoice process. And they're a supply chain software company headquartered in the southeast of the United States. They've been in business for 45 years. So as you can imagine, and many of you can probably relate to this, the longer you've been doing business, the way you've been doing business, the harder it is to change. And the harder it is, especially in this case, they had 28 locations in 28 states, 5 different countries. That's a difficult process to change. It takes people, process, and technology products to really come together to make this an effective solution. Now, their challenges were much like what we just talked about. No visibility into their invoice. They had payment approval process that was very siloed and not everybody who needed access to that could see it. They had inaccurate GL codes, no control over multi-company coding. They had issues that many of us can relate to. This led to journal entries and took a really long time to deal with month-end close and quarter end and, God forbid, audit prep, which we'll talk about here in a minute as well. And they simply just had too much paper. And they were moving to a new environment that said, no paper, no printers. And guess what, friends? This all was happening right before COVID. So at the beginning of March of 2020, they were right about to make this shift to going digital, to automating their AP process. And so, Sean, tell us what they wound up doing when that happened and they realized now we don't have a choice.
Yeah, you bet. And I don't believe you mentioned the can kicker part of this, did you?
Not so much. Yeah, no, please.
Yeah, this is an award-winning company, and I'll tell you about both awards. The first one, they don't even know they've won because we gave it to them and didn't say anything, but it's the Can Kicker Award. This is a company that came to us, Mary just mentioned in March of 2020, but that was the third time at least that they came to us. They had come to us the 2 previous years considering AP automation and did not end up, pulling the trigger on it and implementing it. And that's a key part of improving your AP process, is to actually make the decision to purchase an AP automation solution, right? Duh. Mm-hmm. But you got to do it if you're going to do it, and they finally did. So it was that third attempt. Again, they're ready to go in. Even again, as Mary said, and it was COVID that just really shoved them over the line. So they ended up purchasing our what we call Quick Payables, which is our AP automation solution integrated into GP, which I'm about to show you. And with over 1,000 invoices a month, right? You can just imagine the paper flow, as Mary mentioned, that was going through there. And they also had multiple companies. This is a large software company, as Mary mentioned. And so they were using binary stream multi-entity management, which is a fantastic product, but has a deep integration into GP. And so if you're going to get an AP automation solution and you use a third party like binary stream mem, you need to take that into consideration. That's something that a lot of clients forget to ask, forget to tell their new, soon-to-be new software vendor about is, oh, we have these other things already integrated into GP. So don't forget that. That's a big, that's an important thing that you don't want to miss. But we had a great integration already built for binary stream men, so they of course got a hold of that and loved that. They went with our payment batch approval workflow, which I don't have time to show you in my demo today. But just imagine when you get checks and you got to get them signed, and you want to have them paired up with the invoice. How do you do that if the invoice is electronic? We have a solution. We can tell you about it another time. But they loved it. They put in quick payables. They had the automated invoice approvals. Everybody was doing everything digitally from email. So even as they got pushed to working from home, which was new for a lot of them back in 2020, they were doing things on their phones, on their laptops, just from wherever they needed to be. They had visibility into everything. And then when audit rolled around, like we're talking about today, they had that audit trail. And that's not a small thing. We hear that a lot from our customers. And it's something that we tell them up front, but they don't realize how much they're going to lean on it and use it at audit time. The ability, when that vendor, or when that auditor comes to you and says, hey, here's 50 invoices, here's 50 checks, show me the invoices. And with QuikTag, you can do that in seconds. We got great stories about that. So we had a very fast deployment with them. It was less than 60 days. It was really almost towards 30.
Closer to 30, actually.
Yeah, right. It was really, really fast. And I said they won an award. They did. They won what we'll call a most improved award the following year from their own company. They said, wow, accounting, AP, way to go. You guys made great strides last year, to the point where they literally were given an award. So it's a great story.
It is an awesome story. And, we have so many customers, Sean, we could probably do sessions just on customer examples of success. But today, as you've mentioned, we don't have time for all of them, but we do hope that if you can relate to that experience, that this is something that you'll take very seriously within your organization. And hey, step one, you're here and part of this conversation. So we hope that you walk away from this with additional questions that you can go back and ask your organization, and certainly ones that you can come back to us with, and we're happy to help with as well. Now, when we talk about intelligent invoice processing, quick payables, Sean mentioned it a moment ago, this is what we mean. This is the process flow that Sean is going to show you here in just a second in the demonstration. We describe it as AP automation with AI-based data extraction. In other words, KTIQ is the AI-powered machine learning OCR system that we use. It's baked into our product. It's not a third party. It reads the invoices like you or I would and does the data entry for us. Now, that minimizes the risk, of course, for human error, the data entry errors that any of us are capable of, but it also reduces the risk for things like fraud and duplicate payments, because it's going to catch things that perhaps a human wouldn't. It's looking at data within the invoice fields as well as data within GP, and you're going to see how those things come together in the demo here in just a second. And then also included in the product, not a separate module, is the automated payment batch approval that Sean mentioned as well. So quick payables goes from the invoice being captured, read with AI-based data extraction, automate the process of review and approval if necessary, and then invoice creation inside a GP, whether that's a payables or a purchasing related transaction, two-way or three-way match. And then that payment review and approval, and even issuing the payments if that's something that your organization needs as well. So what we are going to do now is, Sean, a picture is worth 1,000 words. We are hoping that you can now walk us through this experience in the form of high-level demonstration for our audience here today. You are
okay.
You should see that little window to.
Got it. There we go. Should be looking at my screen now. We good?
Yep, we're good. Take it away.
Fantastic. All right. So I got a pictures, and I definitely got 1,000 words. So, all right. So, and again, this is an abbreviated demo. Please follow up if you're interested later with us. We can go into more detail, of course. I'm kind of jumping a little bit midstream into this one. What's happened here is that an invoice has been sent into QuikTag, really easy, email it in, scan it in. Your vendors can send it in, a few options for that. But this is an invoice that is related to a purchase order. So the assumption is that the purchase order exists in GP. It comes in. This is actually a three-way match, meaning there was a receiving transaction, a receiving document as a second step in this. That's already been received. And here we are at the third step of the three-way match. So again, PO in GP, receiving transaction and document in GP, and now the invoice shows up and runs through QuikTag. By the way, side note, you could have used QuikTag to upload and attach a purchase request at the purchase order screen, a bill of lading or a receipt, a packing slip at the receiving point too. So QuikTag has document management, which we're definitely not going into today, but you could use it for that as well. Again, here we are in the third step. What has QuikTag done? Mary mentioned KTIQ, and this is what it does. It reads the invoice as soon as it comes in, and it knows what queue to route it to, whether to a non-PO invoice, which we'll look at in a second, or to a purchase order invoice, which is where this one is, and it puts it in the right QuikTag queue, which is what we're in right now. In the top left-hand corner, purchase, enter, match, index queue. That's what we're in. So this invoice was routed by KTIQ here. Then KTIQ read the information off the invoice and went into your GP database and found the vendor information, number one, which you can see filled out in the header lines up here. So we see that it's Uline and the Uline vendor name. It grabbed the doc number, that's the invoice number, pulled that off of the invoice along with the invoice date, and also pulled off the invoice amount of $9,400. So there's some data extraction. So we're leveraging database integration and data extraction, but because it is a purchase-related invoice, then we also are going to show you the purchase lines, and that's what we see down here in this next big white block, purchase invoice line. So look at that line item there that I'll highlight in that beige color. That is what is in GP today that, again, we've already have as a purchase order, and as you can see, we've received. So this is GP information that we pull back for you, and now you guys can do a quick stare and compare and say, hey, does this match or not? If it does, great. We're going to go ahead and hit submit down here, and it's going to go right into GP, right? Because most clients do it this way, almost everybody. The purchase request to create the purchase order was the approval. As long as it matches, it doesn't need any more approval. Let's just pay the vendor. So we can hit submit and push this in and create a transaction to pay the vendor with right there. What if it doesn't? All right. What if I look over and I see, hey, the PO was 200. We received 200 and we're being billed for 300. I don't know, there's an error of some kind, right? Most commonly, the unit cost might have gone up between now and then. And that's a problem, right? Especially if it kicks you out of the, the tolerance that you'll allow. I mean, you'll let tax change the total amount probably, but you're not going to let a 20% unit price increase, right? So there could be some exceptions that pop up here. You guys know them better than I do. And if you don't know the answer, and I'm Sean, the AP guy, and I see the exception, and I'm not going to let it slip by me, and I got to get some answers, well, I come right up here to this little column where I can choose to send it to someone. Perhaps it's the purchasing manager or whoever it is in the organization, and I'll pick them from a list, and then I will just throw in some comments down here in the workflow comments, and addressing whatever the issue is. So now I'm going to create a workflow item. Once I hit submit here, it won't go to GP. It'll workflow to whoever I put in that approver field, and with my comments and say, hey, Tiffany, please tell me why the unit cost is 20% more. We need an answer. Tiffany's the purchasing manager. She gets on the line and calls the vendor. Hey, Uline, what's going on? That type of thing. So, and then she can reply back to me, here in QuikTag, digitally, of course, with her comment, and then I have instructions as the AP person on what I'm supposed to do. So hopefully that takes place quickly, and we route that back and forth within 20 minutes or something. And then I get it back here, and then if I do have to make a change down here, I can. If I need to come down here and edit the unit cost or the quantity to the invoice, I can, because that's what GP would let you change at this point. So that's what we'd let you change. So that's it. I don't have to make any changes. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit submit like I promised. As you see, the tax information is there too, by the way. That's nice to have. So this has been successfully submitted, and this is going to go right into GP. Now, we don't integrate with GP, by the way, and please don't hang up and jump off the call. I'm kind of being funny here. We don't integrate. We're embedded in GP, right? It's deeper than that. Anybody can integrate to this or that, but we are embedded, and here's what I'm going to show you. So I'll open up the Enter Match Invoice screen, which is where this three-way transaction would be processed within GP. And what you're going to see here, my GP is a little slow this morning, right here off the additional menu, tag documents, view documents, search view. That's what I mean by embedded. We are in the system, in line. We want to see our work queue. This is a KwikTag GP work queue. And when I open that up, we will see any three-way invoice that has come through. We're pretty efficient around here, so we only have the one that I just sent in. And there it is. So if there was several here, we'd have a bunch of them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the transaction into GP, this little top right-hand button, create, right? Now, if there was, 100 of them here, and I was going to pick 50 of them because they can all go to the same, GP batch, then that's fine. I can choose whichever ones, however many, some, none, all, and send them in. We're going to send this one in. By the way, I can, here, I'll hit create. Again, it's going to ask me what batch I want to assign it to. Maybe you guys do daily batches. I could type in this, field right here, my initials and, today's date and, whatever, create a batch on the fly. A lot of people like to do that, like to do daily batches. This drop down has all of my open batches right now. And so I can choose one of those, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit the Sean three-way demo batch. So this transaction will disappear out of my queue and head into GP and create for me. So it brings it in, and then I go additional view documents. So it creates the transaction, but when we do that, of course, we also pass the document over as well, okay? So I have the actual invoice right there. I can open that up and take a look at that, okay? So now this is gonna open up and appear as though it's right here in GP. That's the user experience we wanna give you, but it's not, of course. It really lives over in KwikTag. So with that, that's PO. That's a two-way match. We do the three-way match as well. And we're going to now take a look at the non-PO invoice and take care of that. So really very similar experience. How are we doing on time, Mary? I know we're probably got like 1 minute left, huh?
You've got like 2 minutes, yeah.
2 minutes. I knew I was coming up on it. So let's just jump into the non-PO invoice. I told you guys this would be rapid fire. So, but hopefully that's making it not so boring, right? So we'll go into the quick payables and we'll take a look.
Demos are never boring, but continue.
You're too bad. Okay, so let's just bring up, let's see here. Let's refresh this. Get a new start. There we go. So I'll navigate to mine. We'll open one of these. Exact same concept. This is the non-purchase order related invoice though, so we don't have to match it to anything. We just want to send it for approval. So same thing. All the information, and boy, if you know that screen, your payable transaction entry screen in GP, you realize, man, that's practically reproduced here. Everything is. So anything you have in GP for defaults, like, you can see here, we got the payment terms. You can change your remit to address if for some reason you need to. Anything with tax schedule IDs or, would be in there, the shipping method. Anything that is defaulted into GP is defaulted and sent, right? Because the same thing. We read the invoice, we realized the vendor, we pulled all the information back, and that's what we pulled back. And yes, we put in GL codes there. Again, do you have those on the vendor card as defaults? Then great. And we'll code it for you. You can delete, you can change, you can edit. There's a way to manipulate all of this information. You're not, married to any of it. You can change any of it that you want, but it's all defaulted for you. And then again, approver. If this had to get an approval, I just would pick the approval person or approver that it goes to. It would route to them. I didn't even show you, emails, but they'll get an email approval. They can approve in KwikTag. However many approval tiers that you need, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever you need. And then when it's done, just like you saw previously, we push it into GP and create the payable transaction entry. I think my time's up, Mayor.
Excellent, Sean. Excellent demonstration. Thank you so much for showing us both purchase order and non-purchase order invoices in that demonstration. And friends, as Sean mentioned, we covered it at kind of a high level here, but we would be happy to go through a more detailed demonstration for anybody who is, taking that next step of looking more seriously and wants to see something more closely within the product. But one other thing that we highlighted and that Sean mentioned in the demo, but that again, we didn't have time to show you, is that audit prep. And we talked to companies at this time of year, as probably many of you can relate, that are, spending weeks and sometimes months running to offsite storage, digging out invoices and digging out the check and all the supporting invoices like Sean mentioned early. If you do that in KwikTag, there's a search criteria that is right here up at this little top navigation at the top of your search bar inside of KwikTag. This is again included in the product. You set up whatever search criteria you need to, you click search, and within seconds, KwikTag will then produce the results of, here are the transactions that met that criteria, Mr. Auditor, Mrs. Auditor, and here's the workflow history for you at your fingertips. Oh, and by the way, here's a view of the image. You can give them a view-only access to be able to do this in seconds. We have customers tell us, not only does it accelerate their audits from a timing perspective and planning perspective, but it also reduced the cost of their audit because the auditor doesn't need to spend so much time there. So keep that in mind as you're looking at a complete AP automation solution for GP as well. And a couple of things additional to mention about integrations. As Sean showed you, we do more than integrate. We're embedded. The user experience is essentially baked into GP with KwikTag. But we also have these other key integrations, as many companies need, for either reporting or document association with Cavallo SalesPad or Solver, so they can drill down and do reports. But also that binary stream multi-entity management is such a key feature integration if you have more than one company. You don't want to spend time logging in and out of all those companies for binary stream purposes, and you certainly don't want to have to go in and do journal entries and adjustments to accommodate for your multiple entities within GP. So hopefully in the course of today's discussion, you have seen the benefits here come to life, but let's just do a quick recap. We've minimized the data entry with AI-based data indexing. Sean didn't do one bit of data entry on either the purchase order or the non-purchase order related invoice that he demonstrated for us. We can reduce the overall cost of your invoice processing by up to 80%, sometimes more, depending on your organizational cost today. And it really lets your team get back to higher level finance functions, reporting and analysis, and looking forward to planning and budgeting, those sorts of things, so that you're not just doing data entry and chasing paper. We really want to make that process more efficient. As you saw, the best practices for invoice workflows, they can go straight into GP if that's what you need them to do, or they can be routed for review and approval. We've been doing this for a long time, so we've baked in years of experience and customer examples into the workflows that are part of Quick Payables Accelerate. You saw the fraud reduction, even in the error of Sean creating the message within GP. We do a duplicate detection at the time the invoice is received, and then again when the invoice gets created inside of GP. So reduce that risk for fraud. Seamless integration with GP, we've covered that, I think, in both the discussion and the demo. So hopefully you see how that can work. There are no exports, no imports, everything is in real time. And then that AP and payment approval, we didn't have time to show it today, but if it's something that you need, our customers really enjoy it, and it saves them a ton of time when it comes time to cut the checks, issue the payments. All of that can be done in the same system. No extra module, no extra cost. And certainly it enables you to meet audit and financial compliance requirements. So a quick commercial, if you will, or recap if you're not familiar with KwikTag. We have been in the Microsoft space. We're very committed to solutions for finance teams, specifically within the Microsoft space and community. We focus on GP, Business Central, and others that we have a lot of solutions for across the document management space as well. And we've been doing this for about 25 years, which as a result of that, we have more than 120,000 business users around the globe. And our solutions are priced to be affordable for everyone and scalable. It's usage-based, so it's the number of invoices that you have, and all of the rest of the features come with the solution, but that's the only thing that really impacts the price. We continue to take customer feedback and partner feedback into account as we are continuing to innovate and really build new features and functions into our solutions, much like KTIQ, as we talked about with our AI-powered OCR. Now, that brings us to the end of our session. We do have a couple of questions here that hopefully we have time for. If you're interested in in participating and sticking around for the Q&A. We do have time for a few of those. Let's turn to those. It looks like our first question, Sean, is does this also work with vendor credits as well as invoices in the system? So in the screen of the invoice, especially if it's a non-purchase order related invoice, a payables invoice, if you will, the default is to invoice because that's what we expect most of the transactions to be. But if it happens to be a credit, you can just change that exactly the way that you would in GP. It's a little drop-down function in the Quick Payables screen, and you change it to credit and then process it accordingly. All the GL codes will be updated when that transaction gets created in GP as well. So absolutely great question. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of our 30 minutes and our webinar discussion today on automating your GP invoice process with best practices, tips, audit prep, and a demonstration. And we hope that you have enjoyed today's session. If you have additional questions, we would love to continue the conversation. Please visit us at KwikTag.com or reach out to any of us directly via email or phone call. We'd be happy to do a more detailed demo or answer any questions that you have. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Sean for being here. Impressive demo and have a great day.